The interview room was quiet, except for the soft hum of air recyclers. Dim lights cast long shadows across the metal walls of Kepler 7 station. Zethkar sat in the oversized chair, his 4 prosthetic limbs clicking softly as he adjusted his position. The scars on his face told stories of battles fought long ago. Across from him, Yulthara held her recording device with steady hands. The young journalist had traveled far to reach this neutral station. She wanted to hear the truth about the war that had shocked the galaxy. The war where humans had faced the mighty Vorthic Empire and somehow survived. "Are you ready to begin?" she asked in the common tongue. Zethkar's mandibles clicked nervously. His remaining natural arm trembled slightly. "I have waited many cycles to tell this story, but I am not sure anyone will believe it. The Coalition wants to understand what happened at Proxima Ridge. The official reports say 3 Vorthek divisions were held back by a single human unit. Is this true?" The old warrior's eyes grew distant. "Truth, but that battle was just one piece of a larger horror. To understand Proxima Ridge, you must first know how we met your species. How we learned that our intelligence reports were very wrong." Yulthara leaned forward. "Tell me about first contact." Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old pain. "We called ourselves the Scourge of the Outer Rim. 47 worlds had fallen to our might in just 2 cycles. Our ships blocked out the suns. Our warriors were 8 feet tall with natural armor that could stop energy blasts. We had fought the Krell, the Zephyrians, even the machine worlds of Sector 9. All had surrendered or been destroyed." He paused to take a drink from the water container beside him. His prosthetic hand shook slightly as he lifted it. "Then our scouts found Earth, a blue world full of soft creatures that walked on 2 legs. They had no claws, no natural armor, no energy weapons. Their ships were slow and clumsy. Our commanders laughed when they saw the reports. Some said we should skip this world entirely. It would be too easy to be worth the fuel. But you invaded anyway?" High Command wanted a quick victory to boost morale. The war with the hegemony had been costly. A simple conquest would remind our people of Vorthic's strength. We were told it would take 3 days at most. Zethkar's scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile. "I was part of the advance guard, elite shock troops, the best warriors in the fleet. We were excited to have such an easy assignment after months of hard fighting." "What was your first target?" "A human colony called New Austin, a farming world with maybe 2 million inhabitants. No military bases, no defense platforms, just farms and small towns scattered across the continents. Our intelligence said they had only local police and some kind of citizen militia." The veteran warrior shifted in his chair. One of his prosthetic legs made a soft whirring sound as internal motors adjusted. "We came out of hyperspace at dawn, local time. 50 ships, including 3 battle cruisers. Enough firepower to glass the entire planet if needed. The humans had detected us, of course. Their primitive sensors were slow but functional. Did they try to surrender?" Zethkar laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Surrender? We? BROADCST, the standard terms. Lay down your weapons, submit to Vorthic rule, and deaths would be minimal. Most species at least tried to negotiate. Not the humans. What did they do? Nothing. Complete radio silence. Our communication officers thought their equipment had failed. We waited 6 hours for some kind of response. Any response. Instead, we watched their civilian ships launching from the surface. Yulthara made a note on her device. Evacuation. Ships? We thought so at first. Large vessels moving slowly, heading for the outer system. Standard refugee pattern. Our fleet commander decided to let them go. Killing civilians was unnecessary, if the world surrendered quickly. Zethkar's expression grew darker. We were fools. Those ships were not full of frightened farmers. They carried the old, the sick, the very young, everyone who could not fight. The humans had made their choice before we even arrived. They chose to fight. They chose to die rather than kneel. Every adult who could hold a weapon stayed behind. Mothers kissed their children goodbye and picked up rifles. Fathers who had spent their lives growing grain learned to make bombs. Teachers became snipers. Shop owners became soldiers. The old warrior was quiet for a moment, lost in memory. I was in the third wave to reach the surface. By then, the first two waves were already in trouble. What should have been a simple landing had become a running battle. The humans had turned their own cities into fortresses. How many humans were fighting? Maybe 50,000 across the entire planet. We had brought 200,000 warriors, plus orbital support. The numbers should have made it a massacre. Zethkar's voice grew soft. It was a massacre, just not the one we expected. Tell me about your first ground engagement. Zethkar closed his eyes. Lieutenant Jake Morrison. I learned his name later, from captured records. He commanded the defense of Landing Zone 7, where our troopships were trying to establish a foothold. One human officer and maybe 200 militia fighters. Farmers, mechanics, store clerks. People who had never seen real combat before that day. They were dug into the ruins of what had been a shopping center. The veterans' prosthetic fingers drummed against the table. Our assault leader was Korvash the Destroyer. He had conquered 6 worlds personally. He looked at the human positions and ordered a frontal assault. Why waste time with tactics against such weak opponents? What happened? The humans were using kinetic slug throwers, primitive projectile weapons that fired metal bullets. Our energy shields were designed to stop plasma bolts and laser fire. The bullets went right through them like the shields were not even there. Zethkar's voice carried old amazement. But that was not the worst part. When our warriors fell, the humans did something we had never seen before. They came out of their safe positions to rescue their wounded. Under fire, with death all around. They risked everything to save their comrades. That seems foolish from a tactical perspective. Foolish, yes. But it did something to my unit that I still do not fully understand. These soft, weak humans were braver than warriors who had been bred for battle. They were willing to die for each other. Not for conquest, not for glory, but for love. The interview room fell silent, except for the distant hum of the station's engines. Yulthara waited patiently for the veteran to continue. Jake Morrison held that landing zone for 18 hours. When we finally overran his position, we found him at his command post, still calling in artillery strikes on our positions. He had been shot 7 times, but kept fighting until the end. Zethkar looked directly at the journalist. That was when I first understood that we had made a terrible mistake. We were not fighting farmers and shopkeepers. We were fighting humans, and humans, I learned, do not know how to quit. Yulthara watched as Zethkar stared at his prosthetic hands. The metal fingers moved slowly, making soft clicking sounds. She could see the old pain in his eyes, the memories that still haunted him after all these years. New Austin was just the beginning, he said finally. High Command was angry about our losses, but they blamed poor planning. They said the local commanders had been careless. The next target would be different. Where did you go next? Harvest Prime, an agricultural world with 3 million humans. Rolling hills covered in wheat fields as far as the eye could see. Beautiful planet, really. We had detailed intelligence this time. Orbital surveys, intercepted communications. Everything. Zethkar shifted in his chair, his prosthetic leg making a soft whirring sound. I was assigned to the Crimson Talon unit. Elite shock troops, genetically enhanced for combat. We were 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor, trained. From birth to kill. 47 worlds had fallen to units like ours. How many humans were defending the planet? Maybe 10,000 total. Scattered across the continents in small farming communities. Most were local militia with basic training. The intelligence. Reports said they had few heavy weapons and no air support. It should have been simple. The old warrior paused to drink from his water container. His hands shook slightly as he lifted it. We landed at dawn near the main farming settlement. Golden wheat fields stretched to the horizon. It looked peaceful, almost empty. Our commander, War Leader Thekvar, ordered a rapid advance to the town center. He wanted to capture the local leaders quickly and force a surrender. But the humans were ready? Ready. Zethkar's mandibles clicked nervously. The wheat fields looked empty, but they were full of hidden trenches, bunkers disguised as farm buildings, weapon caches buried under irrigation pipes. The humans had turned their entire world into a fortress. Yulthara made notes as he spoke. Who was commanding the human forces? Captain Lisa Hayes of the Colonial Marines. I learned her name from captured radio transmissions. She had maybe 200 trained soldiers and 800 local volunteers. Farmers, teachers, shop owners. People who should have been easy to defeat. Zethkar's voice grew quiet. But Hayes had done something brilliant. She knew she could not win a direct fight, so she did not try. Instead, she turned the battle into a hunt, with us as the prey. What do you mean? The wheat fields were like a maze. Narrow paths between tall grain, perfect for ambushes. Every barn was rigged with explosives. Every road had hidden mines. The humans would attack from one direction, then disappear into tunnels they had dug under the fields. The veteran warrior looked out the small window at the stars beyond. My unit advanced toward the town center. We felt confident. These were just farmers with simple weapons. And the first mine exploded. How bad was it? The blast killed 3 of my squad mates instantly. The rest of us took cover in what looked like an abandoned farmhouse. That was a mistake. The building was full of booby traps. Every door, every window, every step was dangerous. Zethkar's prosthetic fingers drummed against the table. While we were trapped in that house, Staff Sergeant Pete Collins began his hunt. One human with a long-range rifle, hidden somewhere in the wheat fields. One sniper held up your entire unit? Not just held up. Collins was picking us off one by one. Every time someone tried to move, another warrior fell. He was using the wheat as cover, moving position after each shot. We could not find him, could not stop him. The old warrior's voice carried a mixture of fear and respect. Collins held that street for 6 hours. 6 hours of terror where we could not advance, could not retreat, could not even move without risking death. Our sensors could not lock onto him. Our heavy weapons could not hit him. Just one human with an old rifle and perfect knowledge of his home ground. How did it end? We called for orbital bombardment, plasma strikes from our battle cruisers. We destroyed 3 city blocks to kill 1 human soldier. Zethkar's voice was bitter. War Leader Thekvar was crying when he gave the order. A veteran of 20 campaigns reduced to tears by a human sniper. Yulthara looked up from her notes. That seems like an extreme reaction. You do not understand? Thekvar had conquered worlds. He had faced the best warriors in the galaxy. But he had never met an enemy who fought like Pete Collins. Someone who could not be intimidated, could not be bargained with, would not surrender no matter what. The veteran paused to collect his thoughts. After the orbital strike, we found Collins in the ruins. He was still alive, barely. Still trying. to load another bullet into his rifle. His last words were asking if the civilians had made it to safety. The evacuation ships? While we were fighting Collins and his people, the human civilians were escaping. Transport ships hidden in underground hangars, launched while we were busy with the ground battle. By the time we realized what was happening, most of the planet's population was gone. Sithkar's scarred face showed old pain. But the worst was yet to come. The humans had one more surprise for us. Their devil weapons. Chemical weapons? Explosives? Not energy weapons or plasma charges like civilized species. Use. Raw chemical explosives that could level entire city blocks. Artillery shells filled with compounds that created massive fireballs. The humans called them high explosive rounds. The old warrior shuddered at the memory. Our armor was designed to deflect energy blasts. These crude bombs did not care about our defenses. The concussion waves could kill a warrior inside his armor without even penetrating it. How did the battle end? Captain Hayes made us pay for every inch of ground. When we took the town center, she fell back to the grain storage silos. When we took those, she retreated to the processing plants. Each position was rigged with explosives. Each retreat cost us more warriors. Sethkar was quiet for a long moment. The final battle was at the spaceport. Hayes had maybe 30 soldiers left. We had 300. She could have surrendered, could have saved her people's lives. Instead, she chose to make a last stand. What happened? She used the fuel storage tanks as weapons. When our forces got close enough, she detonated the entire fuel depot. The explosion was visible from orbit. It killed her and her remaining troops, but it also destroyed our landing ships and killed another 100 of our warriors. The veteran's voice was barely a whisper. That was when I first understood what we were really fighting. Not an army, not a government, not even a species. We were fighting an idea. The idea that some things are worth dying for. Yulthara Set. Down her recording device. How did this change your people's strategy? It did not. High Command blamed field commanders again. They said the next battle would be different. Better planning, more troops, overwhelming force. Zefkar's mandibles clicked in what might have been dark laughter. They were right about one thing. The next battle was very different. It was much, much worse. The interview room fell silent, except for the soft hum of the station's life support systems. Outside the window, stars shone cold and distant, witnesses to the wars that had shaped the galaxy. Zethkar stared at those stars, remembering battles fought long ago on worlds that no longer existed. The humans taught us that courage is not about having no fear, he said finally. It is about being afraid and fighting anyway. About choosing to stand when falling would be easier. That lesson cost us everything. The journalist leaned forward in her chair as Zethkar's expression grew darker. His prosthetic limbs clicked softly as he adjusted his position. The scars on his face seemed deeper in the dim light of the interview room. You mentioned that the next battle was worse, Yulthara said quietly. Was that Proxima Ridge? Zethkar nodded slowly. Proxima Ridge, the battle that broke our empire's will to fight. 3 full Vorthic divisions against 1 human battalion. On paper, it should have been over in hours. Instead, it lasted 37 days. Tell me about the planet. Proxima 7 was not much to look at. Rocky world with thin atmosphere. The humans had built a mining colony there, maybe 50,000 people total. The only thing of value was the ridge itself. A mountain of solid rock that controlled the only pass through the continent. The old warrior paused to drink from his water container. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted it. High Command was angry after Harvest Prime. They decided to make an example of Proxima 7. Show the galaxy what happened to species that resisted Vorthic rule. They sent the 1st, 3rd, and 7th Assault Divisions. Over 600,000 warriors. That seems like massive overkill for one human colony. It was meant to be. The plan was simple. Orbital bombardment would soften the defenses. Then ground forces would sweep through and eliminate any survivors. The whole operation was supposed to take 3 days maximum. Zethkar's mandibles clicked nervously. I was assigned to the 3rd Division Command Staff. My job was tactical analysis and prisoner interrogation. I thought it would be easy work. What went wrong? Everything. The humans had been preparing for months. When our scouts had surveyed the system, they saw a simple mining operation. What they missed was that the humans were not just mining ore. They were mining the mountain itself. The veteran warrior's voice grew quiet. Colonel Ben Turner commanded the human forces. A career soldier with 20 years of experience. He had turned Proxima Ridge into something no one had ever seen before. An underground fortress carved directly into solid rock. How extensive were the defenses? Miles of tunnels, dozens of levels, hundreds of interconnected chambers. The humans had moved their entire population underground. Command centers, hospitals, weapon factories, living quarters. Everything they needed to survive a long siege. Zethkar stared at his prosthetic hands. Our orbital bombardment lasted for 6 hours. We threw everything we had at that ridge. Plasma cannons, kinetic strikes, even some experimental weapons. When the smoke cleared, the mountain looked like the surface of a dead moon. But the humans survived? Not just survived. They were waiting for us. The moment our ground forces started landing, artillery fire began coming from positions that should not have existed anymore. Guns firing from inside solid rock. The old warrior's voice carried old amazement. Turner had built firing ports that were invisible from orbit. Weapon positions that could be sealed and hidden when not in use. Our intelligence had completely missed them. How did the ground assault begin? The 1st Division landed at the base of the ridge. 20,000 elite warriors in full combat armor. They expected to find ruins and maybe a few shell-shocked survivors hiding in caves. Zethkar's prosthetic fingers drummed against the table. Instead, they walked into the most carefully planned ambush in military history. The humans had turned the entire mountainside into a killing field. What kind of defenses did they have? Everything. Hidden machine gun nests that could appear and disappear like ghosts. Sniper positions with perfect fields of fire. Artillery pieces that could hit targets miles away. And mines. So many mines that the ground itself became a weapon. The veteran paused, lost in dark memories. But the worst part was the unpredictability. Just when we thought we understood their defensive pattern, the humans would do something completely unexpected. Like what? Counterattacks. In the middle of our assault, human forces would suddenly appear behind our lines. They used those underground tunnels to move troops anywhere they wanted. One moment you were advancing up the mountain. The next moment humans were shooting at you from positions you had already secured. Zethkar's voice grew bitter. Sergeant Amy Foster led the most famous of these raids. She took 12 soldiers through 5 miles of underground tunnels to attack our main command post. Your command post was 5 miles behind the front lines? 5 miles and protected by 2,000 guards. It should have been completely safe. Foster and her team emerged from a drainage pipe right in the middle of our headquarters complex. The old warrior shuddered at the memory. She was covered in filth from crawling through sewage pipes for hours, but she moved like death itself. Those primitive kinetic weapons cut through our guards like they were children. What happened to your commanders? Foster killed General Kraftver, Sub-Commander Yextal, and Intelligence Chief Morden in less than 2 minutes. Then she uploaded a computer virus to our tactical network that scrambled our communications for days. Zethkar's scarred face twisted into what might have been admiration. She could have escaped after killing the commanders. Instead, she stayed, to fight until the end. We found her body surrounded by 23 dead guards. How did this affect your forces? Panic. Complete panic. If humans could appear anywhere, strike without warning, then nowhere was safe. Our troops started seeing enemies in every shadow. Every maintenance tunnel became a potential threat. The veteran was quiet for a moment, but Turner was just getting started. The real horror began when we cut off the mountain's water supply. Siege warfare? We surrounded the ridge completely. No supplies in or out. No water, no food, no medical supplies. We thought they would surrender within days. Instead, the humans began drinking recycled water from their air filtration systems. Zethkar's voice carried old disgust. They drank their own filtered urine rather than surrender. When we poisoned what little water they could find, they distilled it through makeshift equipment. Children were dying of thirst, but the adults kept fighting. How long did this continue? Weeks. We kept expecting surrender messages, requests for negotiation something. Instead, the artillery fire kept coming. Sniper attacks continued day and night. The humans were slowly dying, but they refused to quit. What finally broke the siege? Nothing broke it. After 37 days, High Command ordered a withdrawal. We had lost over 200,000 warriors trying to take one mountain. The cost was too high. The old warrior looked directly at the journalist. Do you understand what that means? We gave up. The mighty Vorthic Empire, conquerors of 47 worlds, retreated from a single human position. But you had overwhelming numbers. Numbers meant nothing. Every human death cost us 10 warriors. Every day of fighting drained our resources while there seemed endless. They were fighting for their homes, their families, their very existence. We were fighting for conquest and glory. Zethkar's prosthetic limbs clicked as he shifted position. Colonel Turner died on day 35, killed by a sniper while inspecting the outer defenses. But the resistance continued. His second-in-command, Major Julie Park, took over without missing a beat. The humans kept fighting even after losing their commander? They kept fighting because Turner had taught them something more valuable than tactics or strategy. He had taught them that surrender was not an option, that some battles must be fought regardless of the cost. The interview room fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Ylthara stared at her notes, trying to process what she had heard. After Proxima Ridge, Zethkar said finally, everything changed. High Command realized that conquering humanity would cost more than our empire could afford. Every human world would be another Proxima Ridge. Every battle would drain us further. So you began to withdraw? We began to die. Not from human weapons, but from human spirit. They had shown us that some enemies cannot be defeated, only survived. And we were not sure we could survive many more victories, like Proxima Ridge. Zethkar stared at the stars through the small window of the interview room. His prosthetic fingers moved slowly, making soft clicking sounds against the metal table. The memories were getting harder to tell, but he knew the journalist needed to hear them. After Proxima Ridge, the war changed completely, he said quietly. Both sides learned new ways to fight. But the humans learned faster. Ylthara adjusted her recording device. How did the Vorthic military adapt? We stopped using traditional tactics. No more massive ground assaults or orbital bombardments. Instead, we tried to fight like the humans. Small units, surprise attacks, hit-and-run missions. But we were not built for that kind of warfare. The old warrior shifted in his chair, his prosthetic leg whirring softly. The humans, though, they became something we had never seen before. They stopped defending and started hunting us. What do you mean? Major Chris Bell commanded what the humans called the Ghost Battalion. 200 soldiers who specialized in deep reconnaissance behind enemy lines. They would spend months in Vorthic-controlled space, living off captured supplies and studying our weaknesses. Sethkar's mandibles clicked nervously. Bell's unit could speak our language better than some Vorthic. They knew our customs, our military procedures, our fears. Lieutenant Kate Murphy could impersonate a Vorthic commander so perfectly that she once ordered an entire regiment to abandon their positions. How was that possible? She had studied recordings of Vorthic officers for months, learned not just the words, but the body language, the tone of authority, even regional accents. When she appeared on our communication channels wearing captured armor, our troops obeyed without question. The veteran's voice carried a mixture of admiration and terror. Murphy led those troops straight into a human ambush. 3,000 warriors marched to their deaths because they trusted the voice of their enemy. The humans were using psychological warfare. Everything was a weapon to them. They studied our culture and found things we did not even know about ourselves. They learned that Vorthic warriors were afraid of fighting in complete darkness. So they began attacking only at night, using equipment that let them see in the dark while we stumbled around blind. Sethkar paused to drink from his water container. His hands shook more now as the memories grew darker. They discovered that our hearing was more sensitive than theirs. So they created sound weapons that could disable entire units without firing a shot. Frequencies that caused pain and confusion, making it impossible to think clearly or coordinate attacks. How did your forces respond to these tactics? Panic. Complete panic. Our commanders had trained for 40 years to fight conventional enemies. Armies with clear positions, predictable tactics, logical strategies. The humans fought like ghosts. They appeared from nowhere, struck without warning, then vanished before we could respond. The old warrior's prosthetic limbs clicked as he adjusted his position. But the worst part was how they treated prisoners. They executed captives? No, that would have been easier to understand. Instead, they gave us medical treatment, food, clean water, entertainment. They treated wounded Vorthic warriors better than our own military hospitals did. Sethkar's voice grew quiet. I was captured during a raid on Supply Station Gamma 7. A human medic named Dr. Lucy Stone treated my wounds personally. She worked for 6 hours to save my life, then sat by my bed for 3 days to make sure I recovered. That seems like standard medical care. You do not understand. I had killed her friends, her comrades, her people. She should have let me die or killed me herself. Instead, she saved my life and asked nothing in return except that I think about why we were fighting. The veteran stared at his prosthetic hands. While I was recovering, other human soldiers would visit. They brought books, games, even music from their homeworld. They wanted to know about Vorthic culture, our families, our hopes and dreams. Were they interrogating you? That is what I thought at first. But no, they were genuinely curious. They could not understand why we wanted to conquer their worlds when we could trade with them instead. Why we chose war when we could choose peace. Sethkar's mandibles clicked softly. Captain Roy Adams spent hours talking with me about his children. He showed me pictures of them playing in gardens on Earth. He asked about my own offspring, whether they were safe, whether I missed them. This changed your perspective? It destroyed everything I thought I knew about warfare. Enemies were supposed to hate each other. They were supposed to be cruel and heartless. But these humans showed mercy to warriors who had come to destroy them. The old warrior was quiet for a long moment. The worst part was realizing that they were right. We were fighting for conquest, for glory, for the expansion of our empire. They were fighting for love. Love of their families, their homes, their way of life. When did you decide to defect? During the Battle of Kepler Station. I had been exchanged back to Vorthik forces as part of a prisoner swap, but I could not stop thinking about what the humans had shown me. About Dr. Stone, who saved my life. About Captain Adams, who treated me like a friend instead of an enemy. Zefkar's voice grew heavy with old pain. The station was a refugee center. Thousands of human families trying to escape the war zone. Our orders were to destroy it completely. No survivors. But you refused? I tried to warn them. Sent an encrypted message to the human fleet about our attack plan. But it was too late. The assault had already begun. The veteran's prosthetic. Fingers drummed against the table. I watched Captain Adams defend the evacuation ships. His mech suit was damaged. His weapons were running out of ammunition, but he kept fighting. He held off an entire Vorthik squadron single-handed. How long did he last? 4 hours. 4 hours of impossible courage while the refugee ships escaped. To safety. His mech suit was falling apart around him, but he refused to retreat. When his guns stopped working, he used tools. When the tools broke, he used rocks. When he had nothing left, he fought with his bare hands. Zefkar's voice broke. Slightly. I was watching through tactical sensors when he died. His last words were asking if the children had made it to the ship safely. He was dying, but he was worried about human younglings he had never met. What did you do? I shot my own unit commander and surrendered to the human forces. Told them. Everything I knew about Vorthik battle plans, supply routes, weak points in our defenses. I could not fight for an empire that would kill refugees while warriors like Adams died to save them. The interview room fell silent, except for the soft hum of life support systems. Ylthara looked at her notes, trying to process the emotional weight of what she had heard. Many other Vorthik warriors made the same choice, Zethkar continued. Thousands of us defected rather than continue fighting. We had learned something that High Command refused to accept. What was that? That humans do not fight to win. They fight because they refuse to lose. There is a difference. Winning means defeating your enemy. Refusing to lose means you will never stop fighting, no matter what the cost. The old warrior looked directly at the journalist. An empire can defeat an army. It can conquer a planet or destroy a fleet. But how do you defeat a species that sees death as preferable to surrender? How do you break the will of people who fight for love instead of glory? You cannot. We learned that the hard way. Every battle we won cost us more than we could afford to lose. Every human world we conquered required garrison troops we did not have. Every victory brought us closer to defeat. Zefkar's scarred face showed old sadness. In the end, we withdrew not because we were beaten, but because we finally understood what we were really fighting. Not just humans, but the idea that some things are worth any sacrifice to protect. The silence in the interview room stretched for long minutes. Zefkar sat quietly, his prosthetic limbs clicking softly as he watched the stars through the small window. Ylthara could see the weight of old memories in his scarred face. How? Did the war finally end? She asked gently. Zefkar turned back to face her. It did not end with a great battle or surrender ceremony. It ended with mathematics. Cold numbers that even the proudest Vorthik generals could not ignore. What kind of numbers? Casualty reports? Resource consumption? Time projections? High Command finally realized that conquering humanity would cost more than our entire empire was worth. Every human world would require years to pacify. Every victory would cost us millions of warriors. The old veteran shifted in his chair, his prosthetic leg making a soft whirring sound. Fleet Admiral Kexter, presented the final analysis to the War Council. To defeat humanity completely would take 50 years and require the entire Vorthic military. We would have to abandon our other conquered worlds to focus all our strength on one species. And the Council rejected this plan? They were terrified. By it, 50 years of warfare would bankrupt our civilization. Our other enemies would reclaim their lost territories while we were busy fighting humans. The Empire would collapse from within. Sethkar's mandibles clicked nervously. But there was something else in those reports. Something that frightened the Council even more than the cost of victory. What was that? The possibility that we might lose. That after 50 years of warfare, after sacrificing everything our empire had built, the humans might still defeat us. Because they had shown something we had never seen before. The veteran paused to collect his thoughts. Every species we had conquered eventually broke. Their will to fight crumbled under the weight of losses. But humans seemed to grow stronger with each defeat. More determined, more creative, more dangerous. So the Vorthic Empire chose to withdraw? Not withdraw. Retreat. There is a difference. A withdrawal is planned and organized. A retreat is what happens when you realize you have made a terrible mistake and need to escape before it destroys you. Zethkar's voice carried old bitterness. The official announcement said we were repositioning our forces to deal with threats in other sectors. But every warrior who had fought humans knew the truth. We were running away. How did the human forces react to this news? They did not celebrate or declare victory. That surprised many of our intelligence analysts. Instead, they began preparing for the next war, building better defenses, training new soldiers, developing improved weapons. The old warrior's prosthetic fingers drummed against the table. Captain Danny Walsh, who had replaced Adams as sector commander, sent a message to our retreating fleet. He said humanity would remember what we had taught them about warfare, that they would be ready if we ever returned. A threat, a promise. Humans do not forget lessons learned in blood. They had discovered that they could fight the strongest empire in the galaxy and survive. That knowledge changed them forever. Zethkar stared at his artificial hands. I remained with the human forces after the withdrawal. Dr. Stone sponsored my request for refugee status. Said I had proven my commitment to peace through my actions. How were you treated by human civilians? With suspicion at first. I was. A former enemy who had killed their friends and family members. Many humans wanted me tried for war crimes or executed. They had every right to hate me. The veteran's voice grew softer. But Dr. Stone and Captain Walsh defended me. They said I had risked everything to save human lives at Kepler Station, that my information had prevented other attacks and saved thousands of people. Did you face any trials or legal proceedings? A truth commission. Humans wanted to understand what had happened during the war, why it started, how it could be prevented in the future. I testified for weeks about Vorthic military planning, our weaknesses, our fears. Zethkar's scarred face showed old pain. The hardest part was facing the families of humans I had killed. Wives who had lost husbands. Children who had lost parents. They wanted to know why their loved ones had died. What did you tell them? The truth. That we had seen them as obstacles to conquest rather than people with hopes and dreams. That we had convinced ourselves they were inferior beings who did not deserve to live. That we were wrong about everything. The old warrior was quiet for a moment. Some of them forgave me. Others never did. Both reactions were fair. Forgiveness cannot be demanded, only earned through years of trying to make amends. What happened to the other Vorthic defectors? Most were relocated to neutral worlds like this station. Some returned to Vorthic space when the new government offered amnesty. A few, like me, chose to live among humans and work toward better understanding between our species. Sethkar looked directly at the journalist. The war taught both sides important lessons. Humans learned that they could survive anything the galaxy threw at them. Vorthix learned that conquest has limits and costs that cannot always be paid. Do you think there will be another war? Not like the last one. The current Vorthix government is led by younger officers who never believed in the old empire's expansion plans. They prefer trade agreements to invasion fleets. But there are other species out there who might make the same mistakes we did. The veteran's prosthetic lens clicked as he adjusted his position. That is why stories like this one matter. Future. Generations need to understand what happened when the galaxy underestimated humanity. What would you want them to remember most? That humans are dangerous not because they are strong or cruel, but because they refuse to quit. When cornered, they become something beyond rational calculation. They fight for love, for family, for ideals that matter more than their own lives. Sethkar's voice grew thoughtful. I live on a human world now. New Geneva, in the outer colonies. Every morning I watch human children play in the parks. They laugh and run and argue over games. Completely peaceful, completely innocent. But you see something else? I see the same species that held Proxima Ridge for 37 days. The same people who produced warriors like Jake Morrison and Amy Foster and Roy Adams. The children. Playing in those parks have that same spirit, that same refusal to surrender when something important is threatened. The old warrior looked out at the stars again. The galaxy thinks humans are weak because they show mercy to their enemies, because they cry at sad stories and help strangers without expecting reward. They do not understand that those emotions are what make humans truly dangerous. How so? A Vorthix fights for conquest or survival. Logical reasons that can be calculated and predicted. But humans fight for love. And there is nothing in the universe more terrifying than a species that wages war out of love. The interview room fell silent as Ylfara turned off her recording device. Outside the window, human ships could be seen docking at the station. Families reuniting, traders conducting business, diplomats working to prevent future conflicts. Thank you for sharing your story, she said finally. Sethkar nodded. Slowly, the truth needed to be told. Future generations must understand what happens when someone tries to destroy what humans love. They will fight with a fury that breaks empires and reshapes the galaxy itself. The old veteran stood carefully, his prosthetic limbs supporting his. Wait, that is both humanity's greatest strength and their most dangerous weapon. The willingness to sacrifice everything for something greater than themselves. As he walked toward the door, Sethkar paused and looked back at the journalist. Remember this when you write your report. The human warfront was a hellscape, not because of the weapons or tactics used, but because we faced an enemy that could not be broken. An enemy that grew stronger through suffering and found hope in the darkest moments. That lesson cost us an empire, but it taught the galaxy something far more valuable, that some spirits cannot be conquered, only respected.